Dean Brown.
Greetings.
Yeah, man, it's been a long one in the making right here, man. We've been reaching back and forth, you know. We was at different places trying to do different things, and we finally here, man. We in the same place. You know, we always see each other in different places, and it's always a good time, man. It's always good to see you out here.
Likewise.
You know, for sure love with the music, man. So, you know, for the people that's you know, not too familiar with your music, or you know, not natives of Georgia, you know, let the people know, like, who do we have in the building right now?
In the building. So my name is Dean Brown, government name. Given some names, so sometimes I'll use them as a middle name, like Chimobi. Chimobi is an Igbo name. It just means God knows your intentions. Akwasi is the Ghana name. Means I was born on a Sunday. I was born in New York State. My family's roots are in Georgia, North Florida. And just a kid from New York, but New York born, Georgia made. I claimed the Gum Swamp, which is an area south of Macon where my grandparents live. So we moved there when I was in the 6th grade. Long story short, moved the studio to Macon, Georgia, while working in live TV out of college. And so this is where the dub factory has been. This is where the records are produced, and a long story of just evolving into a live music artist from like mainly recording.
So, like, what was it like growing up, like, in your household, like with the family?
Music. We had a house full of soul, gospel, R&B. You know, the kitchen radio was always on 1 or 2 stations because my dad thought it was like a good news show, so he could keep up with the news. And sometimes it was a country station. Sometimes it would be, you know, like a rock station, or you'd hear like symphony music, songs by Gladys Knight, like heard it through the grapevine, but it would be like the orchestra version. So I was always tuning into like the arrangements of music. If I name some songs, theme from Shaft, Hands of Time, Tyrone Davis, you know, of course, Michael Jackson, all the early hip hop, and of course, reggae and African music was just kind of mixed in with all of it. So I didn't really differentiate, you know, although my ears would always perk up when I heard, you know, African sounds or reggae music, but it was pretty much all just one music all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, how was it growing up in New York and then eventually coming down south? You know,
growing up in New York, we left when I was 11. New York, snowy winters, hot summers. You know, but most of the way we lived was Georgia, in a way. The way my parents cooked. We were in a town called North Rose, which is about 8 miles off Lake Ontario, and it's apple growing country. You know, New York is beautiful. It's country. So when people say, "Where you from?" It's in New York. Well, how you get from the big city? And I go, no. Trust me, it's country. It's country.
Yeah.
It's more country in some ways, but it was a different kind of country, you know, than what we have here in Georgia. It's still cornfields, cattle, but we were near places like Rochester, and it was pretty diverse. I would say this part of New York was kind of, at the time, the target of a tourism campaign to let the world know, hey, there's another New York. Instead of the Big Apple, you got this area called the Finger Lakes. We used to drive through the Finger Lakes region, going to church, going out to eat, shopping trips, you know. And in a lot of ways, it was just country, but but a lot of progress at the same time. It was a different feel when we moved to Georgia. And Cochran, you know, from my perspective as a sixth grader, the schools were different. It was a little bit less, more basic. You know, up there we had art, culinary classes, theater, you know, all kinds of rich art in the schools. Here it was pretty much just baseball, basketball, softball. Not much of a music program per se. And I liked it in a way because it was more outdoor oriented, because I like warm weather, you know. So mostly when I think about that transition is as a kid, you know, and I still get insights thinking about that, you know, just looking at the contrast between the North and the South now. But, you know, it's just basic. I mean, I don't really think it was too different in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know it was cold for one, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I could deal with cold winters, because usually by March I'm ready for it to just get warm. You know, up there it stays cool. And, you know, again, like I said, I love warm weather. I was so happy when we stepped out of the car after driving out of 1.5 feet of snow and it was 75 degrees. I was like, I'm in heaven. You know. But as a kid, New York is fun, you know, digging tunnels in the snow, and the blizzards come, you're out of school if it's a big blizzard. But, you know, I like warm weather. You know, I wouldn't want to deal with that as an adult compared to, you know, just being here. And my dad was World War II military, and my mom, she was working, she went through several transitions. She's a nurse, but she worked for a while at a place called Parker Hannafin. I just remember that name. And I remember him having to shovel the driveway so she could get out to go to work, because he was actually at home with us, you know, with his military benefits and stuff. And, you know, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Not as an adult. Not as an adult. But it was fun as a kid, you know.
Yeah. So, are you the only child? You have any siblings?
Yeah, I have an older brother. He was the one buying those records, you know, Barclays, Confunction, all the funky stuff. And so I was exposed through him, and, you know, my mom and dad were mostly gospel, B.B. King. You know, I remember the Edwin Hawkins singers. Everybody knows Oh Happy Day, you know, staple singers. And, you know, that continued. When we moved to Georgia, it was still a big tradition watching Soul Train. That was pretty much our lifeline to what was going on with black music. We also watched Hee Haw, you know, and I was very much into instruments and music. My kindergarten class teacher, her name was Miss Baldridge, and I used to just watch her play those walking bass lines with songs like Jingle Bells, and I was listening. I didn't really think much of my listening, but I realized now that I had very fine-tuned ears in a way. One day I went to the piano and I grabbed like 4 keys and I started playing this, you know, I don't know if the melody, you know, and I was doing this on the piano or something like that. And she walked over and said, "That's pretty." And around that time, she told my mom to get this kid a piano, basically. And I was very much begging for a piano all through my kindergarten. And so they finally got me like a little organ, the little kind that it sounds like an accordion. You know, they're wind operated. I called them windy pennies. And then I got the guitar, age 7, and it just went from there. They were toys. I didn't think I was learning anything, but, you know, I'm self-taught within music. Around college is when I started to study music production and actually took a few classes of music theory, but, you know, it was pretty much just self-development. Fort Valley State University is where everything kind of kicked off in terms of me starting to spark and actually write songs, get into talent shows. And even then, I didn't think I'd be doing this professionally, but here I am.
So, you know, I know it was like that love initially, but like what kind of really kind of like sparked you to really kind of, like you said, take those classes and really, take it more serious?
Well, when I went to Fort Valley, that was one of the backgrounds I knew I wanted. I was very much an art student. I was into graphics, and that's what landed me in the field of mass communications, working in live TV. Eventually wanted to just do live graphics, but that, of course, took its own course, working in TV production. But I was already wanting to enhance what I was learning. And so at the time, the best course was take a piano class and learn, some theory. But I remember Mr. Mathis was an elder professor, and he said, "You got everything." My grade for the whole class was based on make up something at the end of the semester. And that was what I did all the time, just make up music. And so he just gave me an A, and I was like, I didn't learn nothing. He said, "No, you got it. You have everything you need. You can create music. And you just keep developing what you're doing," is what he told me. But the real spark to have to play music was when I heard reggae music. And it was just the mechanisms of how to play it, but also the messages, and that connected with me just pretty much as what we say Black American, but learning about there's other diasporas of people that had a similar experience to us. And from age 13, I wanted to know everything about, these people, the music, the stories I felt were my stories, because they were singing about our history, even though they're not in America per se. The songs like Buffalo Soldier, that's our history. Other aspects of struggles and progress of African people globally. So there was a sense of being connected to something, bigger than just what was around me. Most of my peers was listening to Prince, and of course we all love Michael Jackson, James Brown, but I was also listening to groups like Steel Pulse, Third World, Burning Spear, and of course Marley. Marley wasn't even the first one, but it was just that message and that vibrancy, because it was at the time a new genre. The bass lines was different, the rhythms were different, and every once in a while you hear it on the radio, like when Musical Youth came out with Pasta Dutchie. Who's heard that? That kind of thing, And so I was captured by that music, and it fused with my environment, listening to R&B, listening to, we used to just call it soul, early hip hop, early rap, the British invasion music, like Thompson Twins, all the music coming in from England. And so that's pretty much what kind of was in my soup when I started, all those little sounds just mixing up together. But reggae was very much a big ingredient, And I learned music production, taught myself music production, and just went.
What was like the first instrument that you gravitated toward?
Bass. Bass was my first thing. There's this song by Diana Ross. It's My House. I love that bass line, just that whole song. I have to give a big shout out to Ashford Simpson, because she was an arranger, a writer with Nicholas, and I think she produced that. But that song pulled me into just wanting to learn to play bass, even before I was hearing, real reggae music. And but I was doing all this on a guitar, so I didn't really take what I was doing serious. But the first 4 strings of an acoustic or electric guitar is identical to a bass. And I knew that, but I didn't think at the age 14 I was properly learning, but I was learning to play bass. So from that, progressed to chords, and it's like once you get those basic pieces and your mind is behind it, you can pretty much create forever. And that was how that, and that was very exciting for me to, at the time recording on boom boxes and producing records, rewind, hit play, and then you hear your idea come back at you, even though it's a rough recording. That was addictive. And I said, man, I'm gonna always do this. even if I never make a penny. I'll always do this. And it just progressed from there. Now, getting to Macon being the music town that it is, you can't just be silent. Once people know you're a musician, they're going to pull you out. The environment pulls you out, and you connect a different way because it's a musical stew. I think my professional gig period started when Chuck, he was the owner of a venue called Jazzplex, went by to just give him a holler. I was planning on booking a band out of Atlanta. This particular day, he said, "You're coming with me." And I said, "Where are we going?" So he just literally grabbed me by the arm, pulled me through the alley by the Rookery, walks me back to the place that is now the Ninja. But I'm walking in, I see Caribbean Spice. This is 2004. And he introduced me to two ladies. Rosalie is from Trinidad. Novelette is from Jamaica. And he says, "Here's your band." I didn't know if I was going to get kidnapped. I didn't know where I was going. But they looked at me, the first thing out of their mouth is, "You want to do a contract?" And I said, I never thought about that. I said, "No, I don't want to do a contract. I'll just play your grand opening." Long story short, I was afraid of contracts. Just growing up hearing horror stories about the music industry, and contracts is like the worst thing. You get locked into stuff and you have to really be, careful. But they were serious, and they said, "Okay, no problem." And we discussed the rate twice a week. It ended up being 2 times a week, and that was like my first. All of a sudden, I'm just playing every week, and then just the music expanded from recording and singing over tracks, which up to that point I just did showcases, the 20-minute thing at the Douglas or in Fort Valley or so wherever we were, to actually rolling it back now because you got 3 hours. This group of people left, you're going to roll back that 20-minute set. So then we started to add more songs, more tracks, 45-minute, roll it back, play it again. But then I said, "This is boring. Let me start playing live." So that was when the real guitar stuff started to come in. And, had friends that played with us, Kariba, Afia, Detroit, Reggie, just the people that were around me at the time. And it grew sort of to gel into something we would call the band. Sometimes I'll be by myself, and it just went from there. But over the years, being in this environment, connecting with other communities, people hear your music becomes your agent. And I never really had to chase a gig. People just come and book, for whatever, festivals, independent concerts, to open for somebody, private parties, birthday parties. And that's where the real musician experience started to just learning how to be an independent artist, how to negotiate gigs, and also just the grittiness that comes from doing live shows. You become better, at everything you do. And, I have to say Macon is a really crazy great, because at the same time I'm meeting all the classic musicians from the earlier days. They're still here. And, just getting to know people like that. And so the flavor of our reggae music, the sounds that I was doing in the studio is different. We can say reggae, but it don't sound like nobody else's approach. So when we go out to places like Atlanta, Colorado, or the shows down in Florida, it hits like it's brand new. So that was the sound that I started to just call it Dubshak. People gave me that name from just hearing it. It's kind of a rough, rustic sound, but deeply musical. Kind of like what you call a lo-fi but high spirit recording studio, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm rambling. There's some long answers. Those are some long. I appreciate you. Got to give you a shout out, 478 TV. I appreciate you just giving me the platform, just to talk about music and.
But yeah, I wanted to get into instrumentation. One of the things that most definitely stood out to me is your expansion and your creativity and instrumentation, even to the point where you do different things with your hands. I seen you make sounds off your chest, your mouth, like it's no limit. So talk about how that came about, and what's your favorite instrument? And
My favorite instrument. I'm gonna answer that question backwards. I don't think I have a favorite. My favorite instrument is how all the instruments go together. When you find that combination of sounds. I play all the instruments, but I'm always arranging. And I think it really comes from an environment where I didn't really have anybody else around me. I learned how to produce music. I'm always hearing sounds. Even from a kid, I'm just making sounds and, listening to music. I always listen to bass lines. I might not even know the lyrics of a song. It could be a terrible song lyrically, but I'm just grooving with the orchestration and the atmosphere. And that was my ear. That was like my background. So playing live, growing up, banging on stuff, doing all through the first grade, second, third, I was doing horses, on the desk. And I would always do it quietly. I was a very reserved kid, very polite. And the teachers loved me, but I had my little things that I would do sometimes. And I got very good at it, but I never thought there was any application for this, any use for it. I didn't think there was any to do with this with your fingers, Until I got into music production, this became a way to mimic what a drummer is doing. So if you're doing a reggae thing like all that, what I just did is just a snare, kick, drum, bass, and I'm humming. When I was recording at the early recordings on 4-track and cassette, it takes that kind of sound and it fattens it. And so it was very easy to get these rich sounds very quick, record, write lyrics, and come out of my bedroom, drive to work listening to cassettes, and I'd hit my coworkers with this stuff, hit family, and they was, wow, how you get all those people on? And I'm like, it's all me. And that was thrilling to me. Sometimes just riding across town with literally my big boombox at a red light, my windows down, and somebody says, hey, what that you listening to? It's me. And I love that. And that was how I got confidence to realize, people like this. People like this sound. I think I could probably write more songs, get better at what I'm doing. It sort of gave me a direction of what I wanted to do, how I wanted it to hit. Just literally listening and visualizing. What does this look like? What does this look like? If this was on a stage presentation, what is this instrument? What is going on? And I got very vivid pictures of what Dubshak looks like. And I use Dubshak kind of like an umbrella term. It was like a record label. It's Dubshak International. The first records were released under that name, Dubshak International, through a Reggae Report magazine out of Miami. Spiritual Corn and Willow comes out, and that was what started to connect me with people in other regions, other countries. The first record sold to someone in Australia. Douglas Ward was his name. I still got the souvenir check. I never cashed a check. The next order comes from a guy in prison. And the funny thing about this, I was using my home address. My dad goes, you using our address and you selling records? And somebody in prison got our address. And what if you don't send them the record? They're gonna show up and be mad they didn't get there. So all that was stuff. So we had to change the address to a P.O. box. This is before the days of downloading. We're pretty much getting into selling CDs out of the trunk and stuff like that. So, just growth. This growth as an artist, learning the craft, learning the industry, and I love it. And I love being hands-on. I studied what the record labels do, how they would craft the marketing of an artist, what colors to use, and, all of that. I love being involved with that because you can get so many ideas to do something fresh you know, just real fresh.
Yeah, so you know, Dubshak, man, y'all all over the place, man. It's been a couple of times I'm just grabbing something to eat, man. I see my man Dean Brown in the cut performing, you know. So just talk about like you know, your favorite shows and what's been like your favorite reaction, you know, so far.
Favorite show? I have to talk about what's happening at the moment. The current Dubshak, which includes Emily Amos on vocals. We got Jimmy Rollins on sax, and Umi playing percussion, and she's also a vocalist. So it's in a way, I'm in the process of branding it, grooming it, kind of like a super group where you have more than one lead singer. I'm still the principal writer and producer. Jimmy also produces. He actually got a music degree, and he's actually graduating with this. But the shows we do now reach, because it's a band presence, and I've always loved the idea of a band and just energy of other people to bounce, you know. My favorite shows are just whenever the people are interacting with us, reacting, you know. I love playing shows outside. I think one of the shows that really changed me was in a place called Cedartown. And this is where I evolved from the track guy that shows up, gives the sound guy a CD and a thing on the mic. Well, this show is called the Southern Social Experiment. This brother out of Arkansas wanted to do a southern version of the Warped Tour. I don't know if you heard of the Warped Tour, but the Warped Tour goes through the northern states from like Maryland all the way to Cali. And it's kind of like a Grateful Dead thing where all the fans follow the bands night after night. You're camping. So this was supposed to develop into a southern version. The main difference, these artists are not signed with a label. So we were all independent artists. And I got a message in my email, and they just said, "Do you want to play our party?" So I thought, okay, somebody local, we'll go play a party. I said, sure, where's your party? He says, well, we're doing a music festival, and we got electronic, we got blues, we got hip hop, we got R&B, neo soul, we got heavy metal. And we're trying to put all those audiences together like an experiment and just everybody have a good time. The only thing we don't have is reggae. We see on your page you're doing a reggae thing. You got your own sound and blah, blah, blah. So we want you to be that guy. So I thought, okay, cool, you know. I get there, and I'm supposed to go on after this heavy metal group called the Super Monkeys. Man, it was just two guys. Guy with a drop tune guitar playing the power chords, and a drummer with a piece, like 20 pieces. So I'm like, I can't go on after those guys doing tracks and a microphone. So I had my guitar, and I said, oh, you know, I'll just do my thing where and just told the sound guy to turn me up, and whatever hits me, I'm just going to do it. And so I hit the stage, and I start, and they hear this, you know, and that's coming through a sound system at 7,000 watts. We're on a ranch owned by a guy named Frankie Wood up in Cedartown. He was running for city council, I think. Moonshiner. I don't want to, you know, bust him out or nothing. But he was offering everybody moonshine. Everybody was muddy, covered with mud, because there's a river. It was the middle of the summer, and everybody's just relaxed. It's the most relaxed show I ever played. Nobody was dressed. It was all about music. And the stage was state-of-the-art. Lasers, lights, this really big sound. You could hear this thing 4 or 5 miles away, which is why they chose a ranch, because you can make all the noise out there in a ranch. And people started coming running out of the woods when they heard that, just that raw guitar, wood sound, and people we didn't even know were at the festival. And that was when I realized, okay, this is going well. When I came off stage, 30-minute set, people were yelling at me. in my face, saying, if you don't go somewhere with this, it's gonna be your own bleeping fault. Yeah, awesome. I mean, it's like I realized I'd reached people, and I said I can never go back to singing over tracks. Even though I produce and I play all these instruments, I want people to hear and feel the ideas sonically. This was a changing moment. It was simultaneous to a festival in Macon called Bragg Jam. So when I got back to Macon the next day, I was playing completely different because of that one night. You know, it was all about the guitar after this, and added a bass. Maybe within a year, a brother from St. Croix, Snefru Hotep is his name, and we started to experiment with just doing drum and bass with the guitar. You know, him doing just sparse rhythm. You know, and he would bring those big heavy dun 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 It's a big booming bass, and that carved out a niche. We started to get a lot of shows in Atlanta in the roots community with like the Garvey Fest. Now we're doing Marcus Garvey Festival, and we're the real reggae roots people, and the Ital Food and the Rastafarian. So we're playing these types of shows and really connecting. They're just calling us like every week because it was like a different sound, and it was, you know, we had so much fun with that. And it evolved to just adding people. If I could add a bass, you know, I could add maybe horns, even though I'm just doing all the drums and the guitar. So it was a different approach to live music within reggae, you know, within roots and ska music, dub music, and still throwing in elements of just what's in my environment, you know, from just techno and, you know, turbo scratch, you know, and just having fun with it and learning the instrument, and coming back to Macon, that just continued to evolve, and just Macon being how it is, it's a soup. You know, you can't stay the same in Macon. So much music comes from here, and you end up playing different. So when you go to other cities and other regions, they think we're crazy. You know, when you're from a place like this, it's got people like Little Richard, A Legacy, James Brown. Everything is extra live. You know, it's non-traditional. It's something about the water of a place like this. So yeah, Macon became the root. Before that, the Gum Swamp. Long story short.
Most definitely. You mentioned having an internship at WSGA. So just talk about, like, you know, being behind the scenes in production. What kind of led into that, and you know, like, for the people that don't know, like, let them know a little bit about, you know, being a little bit in the film production and, you know, lighting and sound and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, coming out of Fort Valley State, I was in my second year when I got an internship. I was no. I was a freshman. I was the only freshman that year that got an intern. Dr. Okehi, he was a Ghanaian professor. I just used to always go by his office, only because he would always tell us, my door is open. You young people, come to me if you need advice, if you got a question, I don't care what it is, about a class, a grade, or life. My door is open, just come by, even if it's just to say hello. So I took him up on it. You know, I appreciated it when he said that. And so over time, I realized he really appreciated when I would just come by and say, hey, Dr. Okehi, how are you? Sit down in his office, and I would just talk about whatever was going on, what I thought about being a student at a historically black college, you know, which in this time, shows like Different World was on the air. So it was really like that, going to a black college. It was a proud, high esteem situation. You know, it was cool to be articulate. It was cool to be smart. And it was cool to be, you know, who we were. And it was also an international school. We had students from all over the world too. But The last time I went by his office, he said, "Would you like to do an intern?" Now, I'm 19 years old. I said, "What is an intern?" He said, "Well, that's where you go and you don't get paid and you study in your field. You go to an actual job." And that sounded really interesting. He said, Channel 24, WGXA in Macon, you're going to go twice a week. And you're going to go with a junior. Her name is Angela McKinney. And so we started, maybe during the spring quarter, we'd come up and sit in the newsroom, sit in the control room, and just do what you do with an intern, watching the newscasts. I actually learned to write stories. I wrote a story about when Coca-Cola started Cherry Coke. And the big controversy was, well, they're going to get rid of classic Coke for this Cherry Coke, and that was the story I wrote. And just learning how broadcast works. Fast forward to graduating with a marketing degree, there was really nothing happening with marketing. I actually fell back on my intern because they already knew me. So I said, well, let me just go and talk to them, and they hired me on my birthday. Channel 24, 24 years old on my birthday, April 24th. And that led to a steady career, learning what they call master control, running shows, running commercials, timing out, to going right into live news graphics. So now we're doing newscasts, I'm doing weather graphics, I'm doing sports, deadline oriented. And it was a real drill because it got me very into deadlines and working, and that spilled back onto the music, learning how sound is supposed to sound, how sound is supposed to mix, how it's supposed to hit the air. And what I noticed in these days, TV was analog. So TV was full of artists, TV was full of writers, poets, rappers. All the reporters were aspiring actresses. And so I realized we're all artists and we are in this industry because it gives you time to think. Until time to get that show in there, everything is about that show. You're getting paid for 8 hours, but we only worked about 3 or 4 hours, maybe less. But it was a very intense 2 or 3 hours getting the deadline. You got the people bringing the scripts, they go out, they shoot. Now we got to take this and make it hit the air right, time it out, execute it, make sure the video's in place, make sure the mic's in place. And that was a good drill, even for just discipline, learning how to work with people under pressure. But being an artist, it also prepares you for the go moment. When it's time to execute, you just stay focused on execution, you know. And yeah, TV was good. It was how I sort of ended up in Macon, working in live TV. And TV in those days was very different from the internet day, because those guys were only competing against the other TV station. Now a TV station is competing against a whole world of internet. The news can hit, you know, very quick. And so I saw towards the end of those years, things like Facebook and YouTube were seen as toys, not to be taken seriously, go to something to be taken very seriously, because now everybody's eyes are on those mediums. The advertisers are going there because they're chasing the eyes. Then the money is going. So an agency or an organization like a TV or radio being very dependent on advertising for its life support is going to pay very serious attention to where's everybody's eyes. Fukushima quake hits Japan. Facebook breaks the story before our newsroom. That was a first in history that happened. So within a month, you know, there's a web team and the whole chemistry of TV starts to change. Newspaper was taken out pretty much. You don't see nobody reading newspaper. You see people with laptops. Radio was knocked down a little bit, you know, and we were knocked down a little. They said, no, we got to adapt. We got to literally become the internet. So those free hours that we had were filled with streaming and, you know, getting digital content on as well as your live content. So still, you know, it was fun watching that evolution, but that was around the time I was transitioning out, becoming more independent with music, you know, stepping out, saying, you know, I'm not going to work for nobody for a while. Just step out and play music, you know. And good thing.
What do you think about like the current state of technology and like where we at, and do you feel like eventually we'll get to the point of singularity?
Singularity. Define what you mean by singularity.
Well, basically, AI would be as advanced as the human race.
I don't think so, because you still got to have an element of divinity. And I think we have divinity within us. And yeah, technology can advance. I don't think technology is bad. I think it's all about how you use it. All through every innovation and evolution, the question is really on how you use it. Like, even if it's a hammer, you can use a hammer to build a house, and you can use a hammer to destroy a house. And so I feel like it's the same thing with the internet. The internet has got a lot of destructive elements to it, but it's also full of education, bridging, communication. It's a library of knowledge. A lot of entrepreneurs get their work through the internet and connect, let people know you're here. And so it's connected the world in a way. And so I think AI has the same balance. It can be used for, putting people out of work, but it can be used for progressive things. As I was saying earlier, I've collaborated with Afrofuturist artists in Zimbabwe who are doing AI. But they're doing AI to communicate African ideas, Pan-African ideas, to kind of bring a certain thinking forward. And I think that's the type of use for AI. AI also puts artists out of work, but an artist can use AI more creatively than the average person, I think. So I think all the while it's going to be a question of, how is it being used? And I think that the question is to use it for something progressive, because the development is going to happen. Development is not really a problem. It's just how it's being used. It needs to be in harmony with the earth, harmony with people.